So, over the weekend, as you know, we had this bizarre release of a video by the pro-Russian hacktivist group Cyber, which appeared to show a fake ISIS beheading being filmed in a studio with a green screen behind it. They had the scenery out to resemble a desert. They had professional cameras, the lighting rig. Lot of speculation surrounding this video. Now John McCain's officially responded to it, which we'll get onto. Syrian girl, who do you think is behind this video? That's the big question that everybody's asking.
Well, we know that Cyber released the video, and they are as you said, Ukrainian hacking group, but they are pro-Russian. And they have a reason, of course, to hate John McCain, just as Syrians do, because of his support for terrorism in Syria. It's a fact that John McCain has been photographed and supported terrorists in Syria. That's not something that can be denied. And whether or not this videotape came from his supposed telephone, that can't be verified because Cyber hasn't released any evidence that they actually hacked his laptop or his aide's laptop. And usually, like a hacking group, for example, like the Syrian Electronic Army, would release some evidence that the hack is legitimate, either by showing a desktop of the controlled computer or by dumping a lot of data along with the leak.
Right, they'll normally do a data dump, which we've seen in the past. Of course, as you mentioned, the claim was that it was an assistant to John McCain, that they hacked his phone or electronic device during a trip last month to Ukraine, and that's how they obtained this video, which, if that claim is true, brings the question, why would McCain's aide have a video obviously revealing these ISIS beheadings to be staged? Why would they even film it from way back, showing the video cameras, showing that it was staged in the first place? It makes little sense, right?
Well, it does that make little sense why his aide would have it, and it does, you know, it suggests that they want to pin McCain as well onto it, even though they don't really need to because it's widely known now that he supports terrorists.
Well, and
But
that's what he's denying today. He's claiming that the picture of him with the Syrian rebels from a few years ago was doctored. There's been speculation about that. But there's no speculation about the fact that he was pictured with Abdel Hakim Belhaj, who you remember was the leader of the LIFG, killed US troops in Iraq, then was supported by NATO, by the US during the overthrow of Gaddafi, and is now leading ISIS forces in Libya. We've got a photo of John McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham presenting him with an award, so there can be no denial there that John McCain has indeed met with ISIS terrorists.
well, and I think there's multiple photos here that we're talking about. There's definitely that photo from the Libyans. Now, there's two photos of him in Syria. One of them is doctored. The other one is definitely real, and I don't think he's denied that one. That one was the one where he met with people who had kidnapped some Iranian pilgrims in Syria. And, the FSA, as we know, are always allied and fighting alongside Al-Qaeda, if not ISIS, and many times they defect each way. But just because perhaps, Cyber made up the fact that they took it from McCain's aides or tried to implicate McCain, doesn't mean that perhaps that video didn't fall into their hands through other sources. And, even if that, the video itself, it's very well made, and certainly the man who is supposed to be Jihadi John in the video matches, his standing position and his height, and, it looks very legitimate. But regardless of whether or not it's real, many experts have said that the ISIS videos that have been released are very likely to be staged. Like, these are normal experts that are apolitical, are video experts that are saying it's very likely that they are staged and a green screen is used.
Which is odd, because we know that ISIS is massacring and beheading people across the Middle East, Muslims and Christians. So given the fact that a lot of these experts have said that these videos could be staged, We had the example with the Japanese prisoners where the lighting was completely off. People came out and said that was staged. We had a group working with the Metropolitan Police in London which came out and said the same thing about a different video. So, given the fact we know ISIS is killing people, that's not in doubt, and they want to create this shock and awe campaign to get more recruits from across the world, why would they or anyone else need to stage these videos at all?
It's very interesting because there's so many ISIS beheading videos out there, but none of them have looked like the ones where foreigners were killed. It's only these times where either Americans or Brits or Japanese or Jordanian pilots were killed, where all the stage lighting and everything that comes out. When Syrians or Iraqis are killed, there's plenty of videos there, but none of them have this staged look to them.
Yeah, because in the ones where the American journalists were beheaded, these videos, in every one that I saw, you don't actually see the beheading. You see him beginning to cut the throat, which is what's depicted in this fake ISIS video that we're talking about. Of course, with the examples you're talking about, most recently Palmyra, where they got the children, the teenagers, to shoot the Syrian soldiers, and other examples, you see the full, brutal, gory beheadings. In the cases of the American journalists and other Westerners that are captured, you don't see the actual beheadings on video. You see their decapitated corpses after, but not the beheadings. So again, that's why people are suspicious about this. That's why there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding it.
And it's not just the conspiracy theorists that are saying it's staged. It's also experts that are saying it's staged, that are not even involved in politics at all, because it's very likely that those videos were filmed, and the photos of the beheadings were then attached later to the video, so no one was actually beheaded on film, as you said, and it's very unlikely that after that video happened that the beheading occurred. There's a reason why they just cut off just before any gore was seen, and this is a group that thrives on promoting its brutality, so it's very confusing as to why they would do that.
And also I wanted to ask you about these polls that have come out in recent weeks. In France, for example, there was a poll which showed that 16% of the French population were sympathetic towards ISIS. In the UK, we had a similar poll where 1 in 10 were sympathetic towards ISIS. Of course, they've got this huge social media campaign, 90,000 tweets a day. It's becoming a sort of a rock star status that losers and dropouts can assume to affiliate themselves with ISIS. But why do you think that ISIS is drawing so much support, if not, directly by militants going over and joining them, which is happening, but not in such great numbers? Why are they garnering such support on the internet, and why are these polls showing such support for them in Western countries?
I think it's definitely the mainstream media that is behind the promotion of ISIS. Not Al Jazeera is doing it for the Middle Eastern crowd, and the rest, BBC, CNN, are doing it for the Western crowd. And even though ISIS is portrayed in a evil light, they're also shown as strong and impenetrable, and they're taking things over here and they're taking things over there, and wow, that is giving them far more of a boost than anything else. That's why they're getting popular, because the dropouts and the failures of society would like to get some power in their lives, are looking at this group and they're believing that it to be invincible, and they'd like to carve out their own little kingdom in somebody else's country, which is Syria. A friend of mine who had gone to Syria recently, she's actually Australian, of Syrian descent, and someone asked her, do you have a terrorist problem in Australia? And she said, no, not really. And the Syrian lady told her, well, of course, you've sent them all over here. So a lot of these ISIS people are coming from around the world and attacking Syria. But of course, Syria gets the notion of Syria being ISIS territory is what's portrayed in the world.
And do you think they're going to get this caliphate, or are more troops going to be sent in? Are we going to actually fight and defeat ISIS, or will they continue their rampage across the Middle East?
It's a very good question because the answer actually comes from the U.S. military officials and government officials themselves, who have said that they want to, quote, contain ISIS. They don't want to defeat ISIS. They never said they want to defeat ISIS. They want to contain it. So they have no goals in actually defeating ISIS. And that can be seen by the sort of lackadaisical way that every now and then they make a bombing just for show, but ISIS is continuing to advance. The only places that the West, the United States, and NATO will really fight hard against ISIS are the Kurdish-held areas. Like I said, they want to contain it within certain boundaries, and those boundaries have already been set out in the project for the New Middle East, where they talked about balkanizing the Middle Eastern countries, including Iraq and Syria. And in the DIA reports, it also stated that a caliphate, an ISIS caliphate contained between Syria and Iraq would be beneficial to the powers who are supporting the moderate rebels, because it's going to isolate Syria and Iraq. And also the fact that there's something such as ISIS is very beneficial to those who want a perpetual war. And as George Orwell laid out in his book, many governments seek out a perpetual war because it's a good way to stay in power and to take away their people's freedoms.